Well, good morning to you. Welcome to another edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. I'm your host, Jim Tabor, along with Drs. Jim and Janine Fox from Doctor's Nutrition on Callan Road in Gulfport, just south of Pash Road. And this is a show that we love doing every week to kind of educate you on health issues that people have. And you can, if you have a question, you can call in at 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Well, on this morning's Doctor's Nutrition Show, we're going to be covering something that's very dear to mine and Jim's heart. Janine, not so much, but it's, well, Men's Health Month is June. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about men's health because men are less likely to see a doctor. We're stubborn. We're less likely to see a doctor than women are whenever we have an issue.
I actually saw one of the statisticians that was talking about some of the studies about that, and they said one of the reasons most likely that men live longer, that if they're married, is because the wife nags them into going to the doctor.
I think I saw the same thing on the internet.
It makes sense, actually.
Yeah, because they'll nag us to go to the doctor.
You got to go. You got to go.
Of course, I don't have one to nag me around now, but that's okay.
Well, men are stubborn, and they don't always want to listen. But when we find men that do listen, they're some of our best customers.
Yeah.
Because you just got to decide if you want to be healthy. There's things that you got to do to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. So that's what we kind of tell the men is you got to take care of yourself.
Well, the mortality rate for men is like 41% higher than it is for women.
Yeah, it is. Along that same line about cardiovascular disease, because that's always a biggie with men, because that's the number one thing that's going to take us out is cardiovascular disease. And they say that something like 50% or more, maybe a little bit over 50%, depending on who you listen to as far as statistics, they said 50% or more of the men who have that first sudden onset of cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, whatever, never have had any other symptoms. And my suggestion is they've probably ignored it. They probably had some symptoms, but they just kind of ignore it, and they just, like you say, back they don't want to go to the doctor. You don't want to.
Well, I can identify with that because back in 2002, I had a TIA,
right?
What they call a mini stroke, and up until that point, it's like I didn't know there was any problems, any issues, anything like that. Yeah. So after that, I started going to the doctor on a regular basis.
Well, probably anybody listening, men and women.
Yeah.
Most people, we hear so many people come in and say, oh, but I'm so healthy.
Yeah.
And they don't, especially when they haven't had anything happen yet. And I tell everybody, don't wait until something happens. You want to take care of yourself. You want to do the regular lab work. We want to see if there's any risk factors, because if there's risk factors, you change them.
Right.
So the thing is there are risk factors that show up on lab work.
Yeah. Especially if you have some, down the line if it's hereditary.
And I don't care if you feel great. If all this stuff is showing up bad on your lab work, you need to do something for it. So we do tell people that every day.
And it's classic. I like it just a week or so ago. I had a lady call me about her husband, and he's all of a sudden he wound up with like stents, and he had this major cardiac event. And she said, but he was so healthy.
Well, obviously not.
Okay, obviously not. And this is something, that's something that probably with cardiovascular health takes sometimes 20, 30 years. I mean, some of the research shows us it can take 20, 30 years for this stuff to come on and start being a real problem. So you got 20 or 30 years back, you should have been taking care of it.
Who, I can't think of his name, but who was the Buffalo Bills player a few years ago that had a heart attack on the field?
Young guy.
Yeah.
Now, when it's somebody that young and in shape, there's something probably underlying or another problem going on.
Yeah.
It's probably not just that he didn't take care of himself, because honestly, in that case, it's something different. We're talking about, in most cases, you're 50 and over. Now we're seeing it younger and younger, and we're seeing a lot of men in their 30s and 40s that have had their first minor heart attack or
he was in his 20s.
Or a stroke. Yeah, that's why I said that was totally different.
Yeah.
That is something totally different, something else going on.
Something else going on. Yeah.
Yes, something else
Genetic,
going on.
probably, yeah.
So, but when you get a little older, especially the ones that are gaining weight in the middle, and yes, you, and it's true. When you see those people gaining that little bit in the middle, they're at risk. And I don't care how good they feel, they're at risk.
That's true.
And because that is one of the main risks when you start looking at some of the syndrome X's and some of the problems, and we see that so much in men, to where men can gain a little weight and they don't feel so bad about it. A lot of women want to lose it when they gain some weight. But men, don't matter.
Well, I've got about 10 or 15 right here in the middle that I want to get rid of, and I've started working on it this past weekend, matter of fact.
Good, very good.
Doing it. I'm actually fasting today.
Okay,
good.
Intermittent fasting started this. Well, I had dinner last night, and I haven't. Besides my coffee,
Yeah.
I have nothing else.
And intermittent fasting is one of the things that men can do to help themselves.
Yes.
And like I said, when it comes to cardiovascular, if you're a man out there listening, you definitely need to get the risk factors checked, even if you think you are totally healthy. And it's a good idea. We are getting more and more people in their 20s and 30s now coming in, just they're not feeling bad yet. They want to make sure there's nothing underlying, and that is the best time to do it. Now, if you're already in your 50s and 60s and having problems, you absolutely have to do it.
Oh, yeah.
So it is something that we tell people,
Yep.
you can't ignore it
Right.
until the big one happens. I mean, because sometimes you don't live through it. And that's one of the problems is, it's not like, oh, okay, well, no big deal. Once it happens, I'll take care of it. You might not have that chance. So we do tell the people, you got to do something early.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
Yeah, we stress that, and like I say, some people just, we're getting younger people, guys especially, that are starting to say, my grandpa, my dad, whatever, started having a problem. I don't want to do that because they saw what happened
Right.
and how it really affects their life. So they said, I'm going to start early. So we're seeing more of that, which is good. I think that's a really good sign.
And there's a few genetic factors on our super cardiac panel that will show up even younger.
Right.
And that's the LP(a) and your homocysteine. It don't matter if you're 18 years old. Sometimes those are already elevated and just show you that you have the genetic risk. And if you know you have the genetic risk, you should start young to do something about it.
Right.
But you don't know about that unless you have it checked.
Right.
So that's why we do suggest people get lab work at a young age and start looking at things when you're healthy to prevent problems later.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely have to. Definitely
Yep.
have to.
Yep.
Because we got one life. You got one life.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And people don't think about it that way until something happens. And so all the men, hard-headed men out there listening, you do need to make some changes and start being healthy younger.
Yeah.
And healthy is not just lifting weights. I mean, that's good.
No.
And it's good to stay strong, but just because you lift weights does not mean you're healthy.
Right.
And that is one of the things I see a lot of young guys do is they think, oh, well, I'm going to the gym, I'm okay. Well, not necessarily. There's that factor, homocysteine gets higher with exercise. Not that it means don't exercise, it just means if you have that risk factor, you need to do something to lower it.
Right.
And so that's why you have to look and see what your risks are young so you can do something. And if you're older, you absolutely need to see your risk factors.
Right.
All right. Well, we've got more to come in just a few moments, talking about Men's Health Month for you guys out there. And for the ladies, you might want to be kind of giving a side eye to your honey in case they need to go to the doctor. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Doctor's Nutrition Show for this week. We're talking about Men's Health Month, which is all during the month of June, and some of the issues that men have to deal with. What is the biggest issue that men have to deal with?
Well, I mean, just as far as common things, one of the big things that men's going to have to, at least 50% of us, that guys, are going to have some sort of prostate problems as you age. That's a fact.
Actually, I think that's more than 50%.
Well, that's what the stats say. I'm just telling you.
No, after people get over 50, I would say it's much higher just from what you
I think so too.
They
but
may not be treated for it, and they might not have went to the doctor for it, but
well, I think so.
almost
I
all
think
of the
you're
men
right.
you talk to over the age of 50 start having some issues. And some of the symptoms of prostate problems are, like when you go to the bathroom and it just kind of, it's hard to get started.
Right.
And it might dribble a little bit. And then getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom more often. And things like that are the first things you see where a lot of people don't see that as a problem, but that just shows you might be having some prostate enlargement, which the prostate does tend to enlarge. And when it gets swollen and enlarged, it puts pressure on the ureter, which goes right through it. So what you have to do is you have to get that swelling down. And there are things that you can do for that.
And I can tell you from experience, you don't want to end up having to go in and get that little biopsy thing on your prostate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is painful.
Yep. Well, like I said, that's actually the biopsies start looking when they're starting to look for cancer, and that's another big issue with men. It's prostate cancer.
Yeah.
Because it is an issue.
Yeah, according to the stats on that, now if you can believe the statistics, you got 1 in 8 are going to have prostate cancer. And it's going to get, and something like 40-something% of the men that die are going to have prostate cancer.
Right, because if you live long enough, there's probably going to be some there, but if it's slow growing and you're older, it's not as much to worry about. It's when the young people start getting it that it can actually be aggressive and then spread and then shorten your life. But for things that actually help with the prostate, we actually have something called DN Prostate Max. Works really good for prostate enlargement, and it even has stuff in it for prostate cancer prevention, a lot of your antioxidants. So it is a combination product that's not just for enlargement, but also for prostate cancer prevention. Then we have stuff like Crocera, which is really good.
Yeah, the broccoli seed extract. It gives you the sulforaphane or sulforaphane, depending on who you talk to. Everybody's got a different pronunciation of that one. Kind of funny, but everybody's got a different pronunciation for it's either sulforaphane or sulforaphane. And it's a great. I mean, when you look at the research on it, it's like, ooh, geez, that stuff is
the research on it's really good, and it's great for the prostate. And then Adim is another thing that comes from cruciferous vegetables that is also very good for the prostate. So when you start looking, there's a lot of stuff out there you can do. So if you're having problems, take something. Don't wait until it gets so bad that you end up having a surgery, or you have to because it can get to that point. So that is one of the big things I would say, prostate. And probably one of the other big things we hear is ED.
Yes.
Yeah, we hear a lot about ED. And
they say that and guys do not want to hear this. I know, because believe me, it's the first thing I tell them, because they always go, what you got for the ED? Well, first off, let me explain that's probably the number one warning sign that you got an onset of cardiovascular disease, because that's a very small artery that feeds the penis, very small. And it's really prone to just blocking up real easily. And when it does, now you're going to have a problem. So it's one of the early signs, and it's something that you can, if you look at it like the warning light on your dash on your car, okay, the warning light's on, I need to do something about this, not just necessarily take a pill for that particular event. That's something that we stress that, but the guys don't want to hear that. And I understand, but there's your early warning sign. Need to do something about it.
We always recommend, if that's happening, to do the cardiac panel and look for your underlying problems. And then we have something called AminoFlow. And AminoFlow is really good at vasodilating, so it opens up blood vessels. So it helps both blood pressure and ED.
And it'll help blood pressure anywhere in the body.
Exactly, so it helps blood flow. Now, another issue that can affect ED is low testosterone. Now, what I tell people all the time, because people say, I need my testosterone checked, I'm having this problem. And I said, do you have desire? And they're like, yes. And I said, well, then it might be more blood flow than it is. But if there is no desire, it's almost always low testosterone, which we are seeing an epidemic of low testosterone, even in young guys. Our environment is full of
endocrine disruptors is what they're called, and they're everywhere. I mean, believe me, the plastics, and that's why the nanoparticles of plastics and so on are such a problem now, because that stuff gets in you and kind of gets stuck there. And they're even finding some of the nanoparticles in plaque and arteries and things like that. So they're seeing like this stuff is pervasive, and it's also giving out a lot of toxic chemicals that cause things like the testosterone. Block the testosterone.
So we have the chemicals in our environment that's infecting it, and then the other thing that affects it is syndrome X, metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetes, diabetes, whatever you want to call it. It's all about not handling sugar properly, but there's no doubt that when we see people that don't handle sugar properly, their testosterone falls. And so that is a big thing. And we have many things that actually help with boosting testosterone, but we always tell people you also need to change your diet, because you got to get your diet better in order to get that testosterone up. But we have things that,
that was going to be my next question. What kind of things should men include in their diet?
Well, one thing that helps with the prostate really good is pumpkin seeds.
We talked about that last week.
Pumpkin seeds has just got a lot of good benefits.
But they really are. They're great. They've got some good fats in them, and they've got a lot of organically bound zinc, which is a very good nutrient for the prostate itself. So they're great. That's probably the number one thing there, and it's a great snack. You can add that to it. But the big thing is to avoid the sugar thing, and so in other words, getting away from the sweet things, going more to the savory foods. Foods.
And even like when you cook down tomatoes, there's a nutrient that comes out. Now, unfortunately, it's not in raw tomatoes, and it's lycopene.
Well, it's there, but it just doesn't come out.
But it doesn't come out until you cook it.
You can't get
so cooked tomatoes actually bring out lycopene. Lycopene is very good for the prostate.
Yeah.
And it is one of the things that's in our Prostate Max formula. So it is something that is very beneficial for the prostate as well. But you know, when it comes, like I said, testosterone, I have more men come in that want to check their hormones than women. I really do. Men want to see their hormones nowadays more than women because they all think they're having a problem. And so we do check testosterone. At the same time, we check your estrogen to make sure that it's not turning to estrogen and the estrogens are too high. And what we do for that, if it is, dim. We talked about it a few minutes ago. So there is, like I said, there's a lot of things you can do for whatever shows up. So we want the men out there to know, it isn't just like you're checking it and you can't do anything about it. There are things you can do about it if you find it.
All right.
Exactly.
All right, we're talking about men's health, and it is Men's Health Month here, so we have a few more things that we're going to cover. We're going to take a break, and then we'll be right back. And welcome back. We're talking about men's health. This is Men's Health Awareness Month. What supplements are important for men's health?
You know, I'd say probably the number one thing for men, and probably women too, is the omega-3 fish oil. I mean, you know, I've listened to a lot of some pretty well-renowned cardiologists over the years, and most of them, you know, they'll say that, you know, that's probably, if there's only one thing, make sure that you get that omega-3.
It's essential for the human body, and we just don't get enough in the American diet. And like I've said 1,000 times before, when we do our omega checks, there's nobody that's normal on that omega check unless they're taking omega-3s. So it is something that is very deficient in the American diet. I think a good multivitamin's a good idea. The omega-3s, probiotics, and a good antioxidant. And we're even coming up soon with a bundle that's going to have all 4 of those together at a special price.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm already taking them.
Most of them.
You are.
Most of them
you are.
Yeah, because the
like I said,
omega-3, I take 3 of those a day.
Yep.
And, the probiotic.
Yep.
Right.
The multivitamin.
Yep.
Like I said, there's a lot of things, like I said, for health, you got to know your risk factors, like I said 1,000 times, but that's the big thing to do. And men out there that haven't been to the doctor in forever, go get some lab work done. See what's going on, but you don't want to just check a tiny bit because you don't find the problems. We do big panels where you can actually see what's going on and you can actually find them and change them before they cause a problem.
Right.
And one of the things that will contribute to this, alcohol.
Alcohol, well, and sugar.
And sugar.
Well, alcohol and sugar are, is kind
alcohol is, I mean,
but alcohol, And what's really funny about alcohol, and most people don't realize this, our body metabolizes alcohol and fructose, which is the sweet part of sugar, actually virtually identically until it gets to a certain point. Then, you know, of course, the alcohol makes the dialdehydes, which causes the headache and so on. And, you know, but they also wind up as triglycerides. They wind up as fat, and everything that you can pinch and inch and grab, well, that's stored triglycerides. So if you've got stored triglycerides, there you go. And he's grabbing an inch over here. Like,
I'm grabbing a couple of inches.
Couple of inches
over
over
here. I will admit that I've got to get a little bit better.
That's the number one thing, is to realize that, you know, especially too much alcohol. Now, a little bit, they've shown to actually be pretty decent for you. But the biggest part of the problem that we see with people drinking alcohol is they mix it with something. You know, if you take regular whiskey or something by itself, you know, one of the renowned...
A very small amount.
Very small amount.
Not a whole fifth.
Renowned people in this world says, you know, that if you drink it, it makes sure it's, you know, what do you mix it with? Ice. That's the most.
Yeah.
It's got to be straight up.
And red wine. Red wine's
got a lot of sugar to it.
Does it?
Yeah, it does.
But you can do some. A little bit is not too bad. You want to go with more of the dry and not as much of the sweet.
Right.
And people tend to more gravitate towards sweet.
Yeah.
And that's what people kind of try to get away from more.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what you eat makes a huge difference. What you do in your daily life makes a big difference. So there is no doubt there's things that you can do to help your health overall. And like I said, just don't wait until something happens. And don't be like one that has said, okay, everybody in my family dies at a young age, I'm going to do that too. Well, if you don't want to, there's things you can do about it.
Yeah, you know,
break the tradition.
Right. Exactly, break that tradition.
One of our slogans that we use a lot is live healthy and be healthy. But you have to actually live healthy to be healthy. So step one, start living healthy. Find out what a healthy lifestyle is. If you need help on that, contact us. We can help you out.
And you have to be healthy if you want to live.
Exactly.
Right.
If you're not going to live and
turn it all the way around.
Right, exactly. So that's the number one key right there.
That's right.
You have to be healthy. Yeah.
But like I said, again, with men's issues, the cardiovascular, the prostate problems, hormone issues, you know, there's even a hormone called DHEA. DHEA is a hormone that's made in the adrenal
Take
glands.
that every day.
Yeah.
And it decreases as you age. So the older you get, the lower it goes. Then the lower it goes, the older you get, because it is an anti-aging hormone.
It really is.
And stress makes it lower younger. So that's something that's always on our panels, is to check DHEA. But DHEA is a precursor to testosterone. So when you look at it, it actually turns into testosterone. So it's very important as you age to keep your testosterone better, to keep your DHEA healthy. Because we see many men that come in that's on hormone replacement, but they're not doing anything with their DHEA. Now I will say, if you do too much DHEA, don't just run out there and take a bunch of DHEA, because that will actually make the prostate swell.
Yes.
So it's kind of like it's a balance. It's actually, you have to balance them. You don't want an overabundance of DHEA either. But there's no doubt that it helps. But if you do too much DHEA, then it can increase DHT, and DHT can affect the prostate, and it's a roundabout problem.
Yeah.
So,
and the good thing to do overall is get some blood work done.
That's a really good point, Jim. And one of the things that, because guys will say, well, what panel do I need? I'm going to tell you, you really need something like our super cardiac panel. If you've never had it done, that's the panel to do.
But then add hormones to it, because our super cardiac panel does not have hormones.
Right, it doesn't have that.
Right.
Add the testosterone and so on to it. It does have your DHEA as part of it, but it gets into all those real, what they call esoteric risk factors for cardiovascular health. And if you don't check them, you don't know until you're laying there with an IV in your arm, and they're talking about.
And it even does the omega check to see if your omega-3 status is where it should be.
Right.
So like I said, it does a lot of testing. So there's a lot of things you can do for your health. So don't say, well, there's nothing I can do anyway. There is.
There is.
So men, you got to wake up, because there's no doubt, unless women make men, they usually are not always the one to run and get something
Run to the
done.
doctor, yeah.
And like I said, you don't necessarily have to run to the doctor. You can come just get lab work and see what's going on, and then if needed, then you can go to the doctor.
Yeah, we have a lot of men who do that. They'll agree.
We do. We see a lot of men, because we're not the way we're set up, and the way it's much easier to do.
Yeah, we get a lot of that, because the guys that will come in and do something like a cardiac panel or whatever, and they'll do that panel because, well, okay, you're pretty safe. Safe? Okay, I'm not going to create a problem for them. No, it's not like, okay, I got to go have this appointment and 14 appointments to finally get the results and all that. It's just pretty simple. You come in, draw the blood, few days or a week or so by, depending on what test you do. Then we get it back, and then we go over it with you.
Or if you're out of town, we send you to a lab in most states in the country, but not all. No. So there is most states we can do it, but not. And like I said, you just can call and we can find out which states we can do it and which we can't.
Right, and that way you're pretty safe. You go in and you find out, and if everything's great, and there's maybe just some minor things, maybe you need a little bit more D or something like that. Those are easy, just little tweaks and twerks to the health, and you can prevent a lot of problems down the road. That's a big, big, big deal. It really is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The whole thing is to take charge for yourself.
Right.
Thank you for being with us again this morning for another great edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. You can find more information on Facebook. Also, subscribe to their YouTube channel. You see a lot of great things on there, as well as finding some stuff on their website.
Yes.
And as far as the special this week, well,
yeah, it's the DN Prostate Max. This is the formula that Janine was telling you about. It has all the goodies in it. I mean, it really is. You look at the list of ingredients in it, and it's massive. And this is something that I think really, even some of the guys that have come in and say, well, do I really need to do that? Yeah, even if you're asymptomatic, you don't have any particular symptoms, it's not a bad idea to do something like that. Just
and it even has some of the antioxidants that help with cardiovascular risk.
Exactly.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly.
Somebody
said that, yeah.
There you go.
And next week is open line, so be thinking of your questions.
That's right. We'll talk about anything you'd like to. Anyway, have yourself a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.
For more information on highlighting your business and services on Healthy Living South Mississippi, contact Jim Tabor at 896-1313.